The Founders Podcast. Listen to the stories of how everyday, extraordinary people start amazing businesses. Hear how they overcome the odds and find success in the entrepreneurial world. The up and down, the good and the bad, and everything in between. And now, your hosts, Jordan Hansen and Brandon Meinert.
Hello, everybody. A hearty welcome to this week's edition of the Founders Pod. I'm here with my co-hosts Jordan Hansen and Matt Lamb. Welcome. We are broadcasting from the United Commercial Insurance Studio. United Commercial Insurance, we are a full-service business insurance agency operating all over the country, offering you and your company the insurance policies you need, business owner's policy, which I think both of you guys should have. Okay, I'm just going to say it.
Don't we have it? I thought I did have one.
Business owner policy. I don't think you do.
Is that different than liability?
Yeah, so general liability,
Okay.
business owner policy,
Is that if I get injured?
business owner policy. Let's go into it.
Okay.
Let's
Give
go
me-
into
give
it
me
right
the
now.
15
Here you go,
second
right
sale.
now. Business owner policy
Okay.
has general liability, covers some of your property as far as like computers and
Sure,
desks and all this stuff. Some additional coverages and wraps all into one.
So,
they-
it's something that goes in tandem, or should I would I replace my?
You would
liability?
replace it
Really?
because, you know, if your house, because you work from home,
I do.
we had a pod about that.
Yes, we did.
And if
Came out today.
and if you're for whatever reason your business property was destroyed, you'd have to replace all that.
Sure.
General liability doesn't cover that.
I'm going to ask what my customers asked. Do you have any promo codes?
No.
No.
Yeah, you got to search honey.
Use honey.
Search honey when
Wait,
you're
not
checking
sponsored,
out.
Not sponsored.
When you're checking out, not sponsored. So anyway, big or small, we cover them all. Call us today 208-229-8222.
That was good. Big or
208
small, we cover.
We cover them all. 208-229-8222. Give us a call. We'd love to talk to you about your business needs. United Commercial Insurance. And, you know, so that everybody knows, United Commercial Insurance provided
Yeah. Big sponsor.
big sponsor of the Founders Pod. We love the Founders Pod. We're big. I think we're the title sponsor so far.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm excited to talk about the topic that we have today.
And by the way, if you're watching on YouTube, we're just wearing the same clothes. Right?
Yeah, on a
As the
different day.
last one.
It's a
Is
different
this
day.
a different day?
Promise, we just happened to be wearing the same clothes. We didn't record it back. to
Different day, same clothes.
back. Yeah. Probably.
same clothes.
Who says our clothes were dirty?
You don't have to wash them if you've only worn them once.
Don't judge
Exactly.
me.
Yeah, exactly. So, and I don't think our viewers are. I guess post in the comments if you are judging us.
Yeah. Bring it.
We'll listen to that, and maybe we'll change next time. Okay. Side note: it's getting kind of hot in here.
It's
Getting
warm.
warm.
You took your sweatshirt off
I took my sweatshirt off
last.
last
Yeah,
last
week.
day.
A week ago.
Last week you took it off.
Yeah, last week. Anyway, yeah, that was last week, Matt.
Okay.
Okay, so stick with
I'm
it today.
having a
Might
hard
get
time getting over
interspersed,
it.
right? Well, who knows? Because we may intersperse. Well, anyway, we'll.
A couple weeks ago, last episode,
Whenever we did this with Matt.
I took my sweatshirt off last episode, Matt.
The last time you were hot, you took your sweatshirt
Exactly.
off. Yeah.
That's right.
I'm gonna ask you a question, Jordan.
Yes.
I'm curious to see what your response is.
Okay, I'm kind of nervous.
Which is why I think he's asking the question,
Oh no.
to see what your response
Jordan,
is.
would you be willing to tell me your income on this podcast?
On this podcast.
On this podcast for me, Matt, everybody to hear, all
No.
2 other people to hear.
No, I wouldn't.
2,000.
No, I wouldn't.
You wouldn't. Okay. Why?
There's
And
probably,
you don't have to be embarrassed by that.
No, it's a great question. There's probably two reasons, right? One is like, what if I make too little? And one is, what if I make too much? Those are the sides, right? You're worried about both. I am worried about both those things. I don't want people to feel lame because I make too much. And I don't want to feel lame if they think I make too little.
Yeah.
So it's mostly me concerning with myself.
So I would agree with you. So I'm not willing to do that either. To not in a confidential setting, right? Matt, would you? No. Okay. Topic today. I think it's an interesting one.
Mainly because I think the IRS is listening.
Oh, okay. Yeah, there you go. Of course.
Like, hold up. Look at this. This doesn't look right.
Yeah. We have it on camera, what you've made. So the topic is, should employees or coworkers Is it okay for them to know how much everyone else is making in a business? Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. So if you're running a business, or even in whatever setting you want to apply it to, it's a topic that comes up quite a bit because compensation is a big part of your job. It's a big aspect of your identity. Mm-hmm. Is it okay for coworkers to know how much everyone else is making at the same company or even in the same position?
When you say, is it okay?
Is it okay?
Like,
Is it
good?
good?
Is
Is it
practice? Is it good practice to share that information?
Yeah.
I'll just speak from my experience.
Yeah.
This isn't a definitive answer to say yes, you should or shouldn't. I'm just going to throw out there. So I've mentioned it before on previous episodes. I worked at a company for almost 10 years. The policy at that company was salaries are secret, right? We don't talk about it. It's just something you don't discuss. And so that's really the side I know. And maybe I'll share it now. I was holding on to this little piece of information for later, but
is it your salary?
No,
Well,
he already denied
that's for
that.
later. As much later.
Still no.
Yeah.
So at this company, I worked in the IT division, which IT has access to basically everything about the company. Very few exceptions, I guess. And it wasn't by choice. I was not snooping. Wasn't digging around. But we would run year-end reports, and I was able to see what other people made.
You came across
I
their
came across
compensation.
it.
Stumbled upon it.
And once it's there in front of you, it's hard not to be like,
Scroll a little bit.
Yeah. And I found some interesting stuff that made me have mixed feelings.
Yeah.
Because there were other people hired kind of at the same tier as me, but I had been there longer, that were making the same amount of money. And so they just make you have these different thoughts and feelings like, well, I've been here longer. But then at that company, it was always like, hey, each agreement is an individual agreement.
Right.
And I get that part. But it was also like, you're trying to compare two things that aren't the same, these two agreements. And so it made me feel like, well, I've been here longer. I'm not getting paid what I should be paid. There's resentment.
And
entitlement, too. It's kind of
entitlement.
Yeah.
And that's why they don't want you to know.
That's right.
Yeah.
It's a weird, oh my gosh, this question is so interesting and weird because how can you not feel that even though you can know, I don't want to feel this way.
Yeah, I was happy 10 minutes prior.
Right. It's nothing
I
changed.
didn't even think about it.
Nothing changed.
Yeah.
But you seeing that just changed your knowledge and now you feel like, oh, someone else is getting more, even though it has no effect on you. It's zero effect on you. But how do you not feel that way?
That's a good question. That's good. So I'm going to talk about it from my perspective. And so I don't like hiding information necessarily. Let's see. In general, I don't try to hide the majority of the information regarding my business. Okay.
Does that include revenue?
So I don't go out of my way to hide it, but I also don't go out of my way to announce it.
Do you think your employees have a general idea of what
they should? Because insurance is a percentage of your premium is what you get paid commission on. And I've said our premium, our book of business, we're at 24 million. So I've said that a lot.
They could do some math to say,
yeah,
okay.
You can estimate and say, okay, well, if it's at 24 million, then you get X amount in commissions. And I don't know, how much is your overhead? Whatever.
Right.
And then how much could be your profit in XYZ, right? But I also don't go about screaming it and making sure everybody has a printed out report every week on how much that is. The thing I struggle with wages is the following. Okay. I hire somebody, let's say customer service. Let's say the going rate is $15 an hour and I get somebody that I really like, that's very qualified, and that's just the market rate. Well, they stay working there for 2 or 3 years at that rate wage, and inflate whatever. Like right now, inflation's gone up. And so gas prices and cost of living and rent and whatever has gone up to where people are like, look, I'm not going out of the house unless it's $18 an hour. Well, so that same talent and experienced person that I could hire for 15 now is at 18, and I need a customer service, so I hire them at 18.
A second. You're saying
a second one.
This is a second customer service.
And so what I struggle with is like, oh man, do I now have to go to every single customer service person I have and up them to 18?
Yeah.
This is hard.
Do I? I mean, because
do you have to? Certainly not. Should you is the question.
Right.
And the question is the value. Is the value they bring worth $18 an hour? And if the new person, you look at market value, if the market value of a house, if that's the going rate, then that means
because the cost of adding that employee now no longer is just $3 more. It's $6 more,
right?
Because I have to add it to the first employee so that they don't feel, and then they're going to say, well, but I've been here longer.
I should be more than that person.
But here's the thing: you can't get mad if they leave.
I know, and they're right.
To go get more money,
or ask for more money.
Right.
Well,
I agree.
At some point, are we taking advantage of someone's lack of desire to move jobs? We're taking advantage of the fact that there's friction for them.
Because if this is true, where that new person, and depending on the market, right, can demand a higher pay, taking on a new job,
yes,
then it makes absolute sense. And I've seen people post on this on social media. Get a new job every 2 years. Give yourself a raise,
right. And honestly,
because you're the new person.
Yeah. If you're in software, you get, every 2 years you can bump, and they may have changed a little bit because the market's a little bit slower. But I say in general, probably 25% every 2 years.
Yeah,
you get a 25% by changing jobs.
Changing
jobs, but you can't get a 25% raise if you stay in the same place.
No,
you won't.
Well, I just think it's whose responsibility is it?
Yeah, as a business owner, it probably should be your responsibility to say, I want to do enough to make sure this person is happy enough that they will stay here. But it probably shouldn't be more. And that feels, doesn't that feel a little bit cheap? I don't know if cheap's not the right word, but if you think of the job of a CEO is to maximize the shareholder value. And that means reducing expenses as much as you can. So you want to keep them happy so they stay. But if it's more than that, aren't you overpaying?
Well, how do you know if? I think the interesting part about that situation is they could be happy at 15,
unless they knew.
Unless they're Matt and they're digging their nose around someplace they shouldn't be. All right, you're just like nosy Matt over there.
But I also got to throw out we've seen it, negative consequences from giving somebody a raise.
That's true.
Wait, I want to hear about this. What are the negative consequences?
Yeah, so we've actually and Matt brings up a good point, because in general, in those situations, I do up their wage to equal the market rate.
Okay, you say, you don't say it's because we hired this person. They may be able to figure that out.
No,
but you say, hey, I recognize that inflation has changed, market rate has changed, so we're going to match it.
And for me, I look at it. The only reason I've done that is because I'm like, well, I can't pay them more than I'm paying this customer service because I think they're amazing.
Right.
So I bump it up to match it. And so that's just how I've thought about it. And, I should think about it like, well, what if this customer service person was willing, instead of, the $6 increase, 3 to one and 3 to another, I just give $4 to one and say, can you do more work? But anyway, so in the past, Matt and I on my own have been in a situation where you've promoted an employee to,
so not a raise, but a promotion.
Because that's what it's kind of. It was a raise, but the
responsibilities changed.
In some cases they changed. In other cases they didn't change. We just thought you've earned enough to go from hourly to salary, for example.
Gotcha. I see.
And in the situations that Matt, and it was like the same position, with multiple employees, we started them out as our hourly employees with a certain wage. And then we said, okay, instead of being hourly, you're going to go to salaried at a higher compensation.
Yeah. If you're doing 40 hours a week, your hourly should be higher, is what you're saying.
Yes. And so almost instantaneously, we saw a drop off of production.
Because they felt they were salary?
I don't know.
I think they felt that they were above those previous duties that they had before.
I see.
Which is weird.
Didn't work. That didn't work.
That's so weird to me.
But it happened. It happened twice.
It happened multiple times.
And
I don't know if it was an entitlement. Like, hey, I'm getting paid more. I don't need to do that. I don't know what it was. I don't know if they were already on that path.
Like, if you wouldn't have changed it, if it would have happened anyway, you're saying?
I don't know.
Yeah.
But it was noticeable because these two individuals were very productive, very willing to, I mean, it was a small company, so they had to do a lot of different things. They're willing to do those things. They're willing to take packages in their own car to drop them off, you know, at a UPS store or whatever. And then all of a sudden it was like, why should I do that? Or why should I do this task? And then it was bad.
That's crazy. I can't figure that out. Incentives right there is what I would think. You know, I always think about if someone acts some way, you should always be able to track everything back to incentives. Like, what's incentivizing them?
Yeah. Well, maybe they weren't incentivized enough.
But, I mean, do you think it's possibly like, oh, this is a show that they trust me already? I'm more secure now. If they're giving me a raise, I'm more secure. I can probably slack a little bit more.
Yeah, and it's so funny because you think taking away that security was better for me.
Right. If they would have been, yeah, exactly.
You know?
You're getting a pay decrease.
Yeah, I want more out of you.
Yeah.
Pay decrease.
Cut your pay.
And you're welcome.
Yeah. You'll work harder. Trust me.
So, but my thing is, I think Matt would have been better off if it was, it's compensation's so hard because it's sort of a decision between your employer and the employee to have it be public, because a lot of times you don't want to feel boxed in or judged by your salary, because
like
that's
saying if other people at the company know what you're making.
Oh, they're like, oh, he's making a lot less than me.
Oh, look at
Yeah.
And that person, you feel like you just compare.
And that's what you associate your value to. Right. Like, oh, I'm only valued at 30,000. Like, that's how much I'm worth as a person, as a worker, versus other people that could be worth 100,000 or 200 or whatever that number is. Right. And so, but in a perfect world, if everybody knew everybody's salary, I'm sure they'd accept it and move on.
In a perfect world where someone's not getting...
In a perfect world...
Comparing, you're saying?
In a perfect world where everybody was open to it, I do believe that, for the most part, everybody knows that we're all getting paid differently and that I may be at a lower position, so somebody else is making more. In a perfect world, I don't think it should be a secret. I don't think it should be something that's like, oh, don't you dare tell anybody what you're saying, what you're getting paid.
And there's a lot of like movements, people that say, oh, there should be salary transparency to help. And there's merits on both sides. I think
there is.
Nathan Barry, I don't think all the salaries are transparent, but he hires and he says what they're going to hire at.
Yeah. So there's research done, like
he pays for
in that industry or whatever at this level. This is kind of the set rate as
right.
And then they go off of that.
It's not like a negotiated thing. It's like, okay, you're going to be at this band, and that's where you're going to earn.
What I like is when I pay a salesperson, oftentimes it's commission based, and so that's like the perfect shield for me.
Right. It's like, well, just sell more.
Yeah.
Right.
And well, they only make what they sell, right? When you're describing it to other people, they're like, well, they make a lot of money. Well, yeah, but they sell it, and they get a percentage of what they sell, and that's an easy thing to say. I'm not guaranteeing them 150,000. They're selling 150,000 of the product that, they're being offered. So that is a perfect way for me. It's when you guarantee salary. That's when, it's like, hey,
all salaries should be merit based, right? It should be a meritocracy. It should be, right? But the fact is we don't have metrics besides sales. There really aren't metrics where you can say, okay, not easily track metrics, right? It's like, oh, I think this guy shows up. He does good work, I think, but it's not as hard to find like, well, they sold $100,000 in this month. So it's easy to, Yeah.
Yeah. So like for me, if it was a perfect world, I think I would favor more transparency there, because I do believe people can handle it once they get over the initial shock of it. Right. But there's so much emotion that goes into your salary.
Yeah.
And people knowing that.
Yeah. What percentage of people do you think would leave if the owners of the company just went out and posted on the wall or on the bulletin board?
Without consulting, you're saying? They say, hey, this, or maybe they send a memo. By the way, we're going to do this now.
This is what everybody makes.
Yeah. Would that be good for it?
What would happen? Do people just like, I'm out of here?
Well, you would have left, right? Because you found out.
He saw it and he didn't leave.
It was a stepping stone on the path to leaving.
Right. It sucks because libertarian, and so I feel like everyone should be able to make their own decisions. And so you say, well, they're big boys and girls. We can let them. They can handle it however they want, right? Let's be transparent with salaries. They can say this is how it is, and they can make their decision to move somewhere else or not based on that. But is it my job as a boss to protect them? Like, I don't think you can handle that comparison emotion that's going to come. So I'm going to protect you from that.
I don't like the companies when they say you're forbidden to talk about it.
Yeah.
I don't like that.
Right.
Because
That's purely their decision. Whether
exactly. Yeah. And for me, it's like, look, if you want to discuss it, it's up to you. I think most people know what people are getting paid in my office because I've posted, there's only like 4 types of jobs and I've posted to hire all of them.
Right. So they can look online and see, okay, well, that's what he's hiring.
And if you started from the bottom, then you know what each level of pay is and you're still working here and you can talk to other employees about it.
Yeah.
I will never be able to stop that ever.
Right.
I'll never be able to like wipe their brain of how much that person makes, of that position makes.
Right. Yeah. Forbidding it makes it seem like the owner has something to hide. Versus if they can talk about it themselves, you say, I'm not going to talk about it. This is your business. If you want to talk about it, that's fine. And then they have to deal with those feelings themselves. If they feel comparing lower or higher.
So why would an owner do that? Why would they say,
That's a great question.
don't talk about it?
Oh, why would they say don't talk about it?
Because they're trying to protect him, right? They're trying to say, well, we don't want you to, it's just going to breed.
Just to keep everybody in their spaces, right?
Well, I mean, you could say both sides, right? You could, if it's a good motive, you could say, I think where we worked and they said, don't talk about it. I think their goal was, is this going to cause fire? It's just, people are going to get resent. But then you're kind of saying, I will handle this for you. I don't think you can handle this. You're not mature enough to handle this.
I love it where I asked a question, Brandon was like, oh, that's a good one. Then I finished it and he's like, oh.
What?
Just now.
Oh.
I was like, I was asking that question. You're like, yeah. And then I finished it and you're like, oh.
Like, not as excited. I didn't
Like
I thought you went like, why is it a good idea to post it? Like, why is it important for employees to know salaries? Like, why would a company go out and say
what's the
everybody's
benefit of
salary?
knowing?
Yeah.
Well, should it help you gauge your market value? Like, if you didn't know what anyone else made ever, it was impossible. There was no Glassdoor. You could never gauge salary. Could employers take advantage of that and say, well, we're going to pay you 30% less than I know market value is because you have nothing to, what are you going to check against?
You know, one of the things that the company you guys were talking about is they always said, we pay way more than anybody else in the market.
Right.
But I never believed that to be the case because I was outside of that. And I thought, I don't know, dude. I think the marketplace is actually better.
Yeah.
Because they had benefits and they had other stuff. And so if you control, the information, then maybe you can influence a little power over like, hey,
you can keep that narrative going. Like, hey,
we pay.
You can leave if you want, but we pay more.
Right. Yeah, you have to do work. Yeah, and it kind of brings back the thing before. It's like there's friction, there's pain to moving jobs. You have to go apply, you have to fill out, do interviews. Those are uncomfortable. You kind of feel crummy if you don't get it. And employers can take advantage of that. And I don't know, I said, should they? Maybe not take advantage, but you kind of bank. That's not the right word. You know what I'm saying? Like, if it was so easy to change jobs, like it was just like canceling Netflix and starting another, people would do it a lot more. Yeah.
You just enter the transfer portal and another company just picks you up.
Exactly.
Well, that's what Indeed is.
There you go.
Transfer portal. You know, but the thing about posting salaries is I don't necessarily see the benefit as much to make me do it.
Oh, for you as the employer?
Yeah, as the employer, like there's no clear benefit.
It would only be to seem like just so you can say to all the employees, "Hey, look, I'm not screwing you guys over."
Right.
That would be the only reason to say it's like almost like a PR move.
Right.
Look how magnanimous I am.
Is it a way to also attract?
That's right, because you're going to look better.
Right.
An employee's going to come and be like, "Well, I know that I'm not going to." Now, it's also all public jobs are every single police officer, every single state employee, you can look up their salary.
Right.
Because that's public information.
Right.
They're employees of us, of the taxpayer. And so you can see that information. So it's out there. It's different. Everyone knows public and private sector are a little bit different with pay. And so maybe you don't compare that as much, but
I have an HR friend.
Yeah.
Should we call her?
Yeah, call her. She
Teresa.
may or may not answer.
Remember Teresa?
Yeah, I remember Teresa.
Okay. I'll call her right now.
I don't know Teresa.
We had her on the podcast once.
Okay.
So yeah, we interviewed her and she had an HR company. So she's experienced with it. So it'll be interesting to see what she says Would you ever do it, man? Would you ever post all your salaries? No?
I think what we talked about what's the why?
Yeah, it's
I don't know.
salary in general is I think the point Brandon raises of like rate, towing that line of what you should pay versus, market value is not one set thing. There's so many different factors of how long of that employee specifically, what value they bring to you.
Mm-hmm.
Makes it really hard.
Yeah, I've just thought, because I've seen Nathan Barry put on Twitter.
Yeah.
Because there's I don't know what service it is, what website, but
He pays for it. Quite a bit of money.
yeah, you compare salaries, or you can do research in certain industries and locations and things like that. I don't know.
Yeah, that's a hard thing. I mean, you got to think about it with.
Hi, this is Terry.
No one wants to talk to
Not
us.
available right
Over 2.
Over two.
Over 2.
But yeah, anyway, I think the point is when you're hiring people, and I think, Brandon, the point you brought up about whose job is it to ask for a raise? Like, if you could pay that person more, should you? Like, you.
Because you're saying it's on them.
Yeah, should it be on them to always ask for a raise?
I don't know. They don't know that I'm hiring. They may not know that I'm hiring at that wage.
Right. No, I know. Right.
Yeah.
And that's even like when you pay them more, like you've heard it before. Like, well, I got another job. I got the offer from another job. I told them, and then they came back and say, oh, we'll up your wage to this. And the argument, they say, well, why didn't you freaking do that before?
Yeah. Well, you had that same experience at Lenovo.
Yes.
Because you got hired on at one wage, which was a good wage.
Yep.
And then years went by, and people were getting hired on at a much higher wage.
Well, I didn't know what they were getting hired.
Well,
on. I just knew software salaries were raising, and I was getting recruiters coming to me because my years as a software engineer had gone up. Once you pass 5 years, especially, it spikes. And so they were offering wages that were much more than what I was getting.
Yeah.
But I didn't want to leave because my job was great and the people I worked with were great. And so I didn't have other offers, but I went and talked to my boss immediately. And I said, hey, just so you know, these recruiters are coming, and the numbers they're throwing at me, eventually I'm going to leave for those. I would like to stay here, but I want more money.
And I thought it was funny how difficult it was for him to give you that much money.
It went back and forth because we worked at Lenovo, which is a big company, and my boss was great, but he's not the one ultimately making this decision because the amount I was asking for was much more, probably 25% over my current salary. So I wanted a lot more, and so he went to HR. He fought for me, and then it was weeks, months. He said, I know this is taking forever. Our hands are kind of tied. And so finally he came back and he had an offer. He's like, okay, this is what they're able to do. And it was like half now, half in the future, and we'll space it out. And it was like 10% less than what I wanted 25%. It was like 15%. So it was less. And so I was like, okay, well, I appreciate you. I know you fought for this and I appreciate that. He's like, but do you feel happy with that? And he's like, I said, honestly, no, this is not what I wanted. I know I can get a lot more somewhere else. So I said, no. And so he's like, okay, let me see what I can do. And so he got off. It was like 2 weeks later. He called me back. He's like, okay, I got it done. It's more than what you asked for originally.
Boom.
And I was like,
They just found some money, Jordan.
the thing is, it made me think like, it's like if you cry enough, if you're
You're right.
But it's really hard to give it to you. But some new hot designer comes on and they're like,
they have to.
We'll give it to you.
They know what the going rate is. Yeah, they have to. I don't know who it is, but sure.
Hey, Teresa.
Oh,
Good.
can't hear in here.
Oh, Teresa, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Perfect. Hey, Teresa, check it out. You're live on the Founders Pod.
You're kidding me.
No, I'm not.
Let's boost her volume. Hey, Teresa, this is Jordan. Hi.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
do you hear?
Hi.
Do you hear Jordan and myself?
I can hear you, Jordan. Say hi.
Hello, Teresa. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. So good.
Perfect. Okay. Well, hey, we wanted, and we have another gentleman, Matt Lamb, on the phone, and we're having a discussion, and I thought you'd have an interesting perspective of it.
Okay.
So, the discussion was, is it okay, or what is your opinion on coworkers knowing each other's pay scale or compensation package?
Well, in some states, that's required, right? You have to post the pay scale.
I didn't know that. I didn't know that.
Yeah. So, yep. So in states like Oregon and that type of thing, it's a problem. Like you have to, when you advertise, that you're hiring for a position, you have to put the pay range. And so people who are making less than that and have been with the company 10 years are like, are you kidding me? Right? So it causes some serious cultural issues. So that's where the Equal Pay Act came in, right? So we have fair pay for all. And so, as an aggressive employer, when you're trying to recruit somebody, you're going to pay top wages, right? But you may have someone in office that's been there for 10 or 15 years, came in at the bottom, right? And they got their 3% for the last 10 years, and they're nowhere where market is. And so that's why, as HR people, we encourage like salary benchmarking to know what the area is demanding and know what the current positions are demanding. And so if everybody understands, here's the pay range, and this is the expectation for you to reach that pay range, usually that's all that it is needed for everybody to understand. I understand why this individual is making this kind of money because they produce this amount of work.
Yeah.
And I do not do that. So that's where I think the transparency is okay as long as it's fair.
I
think that's the most important thing.
Have you ever been at a location where they forbade discussing compensation packages?
All the time. And what that's very problematic because the National Labor Relations Board says that all employees, not just union employees, have the right to consort, right? So they can actually talk about their pay, they can talk about their benefits, they have a right to do that. So you truly, as an employer, are not allowed to penalize anybody for doing that.
So
you can't forbid them.
Your opinion, Teresa, is strongly in favor of pay transparency.
Correct.
Would you think do you think it's good practice for the employer to post that salary, or do you think it's just okay to let them
disseminate it?
Yeah, because I don't know if I want to reveal it to protect my employee, but let them decide when to share.
That I believe it's an employee's right to share their unless the employer is required to disclose. I feel like it's always up to the employee to share their pay scale with each other if that's what they choose to do. And according to the National Labor Relations Board, they have a right to do that. However, the thing that I support is fair pay. That's the most important thing to me, is just to pay fair pay, because I can always defend you are 2 years in the industry and she is 15 years in the industry, or he is 15 years in the industry. He's making that money based on experience. Like, I can always justify as long as it's fair, right? So everybody who's 15 years or more in the industry is making X, and every 2 years or less is making Y. And so I do feel like that's fair.
Teresa, do you think, I think experience is obviously something, but there's other things that sometimes affect where you work at some place or not, whether, they're more flexible with their schedule, or they have a really funny boss.
Yeah.
Funny boss is a
funny
big
boss. Yeah,
that's compensation.
Funny boss. We always love funny bosses. Yes.
Yes. I'd give up $10,000-15,000 a year for that, I think, for a funny boss.
Be humorous all day long.
Yeah.
So how do you compare those? Those intangibles.
So I think anybody worth their weight in salt, when they're explaining this, explains the entire package, right? You can never just look at what one person's pay is and say, that's not fair or that's fair. You have to look at what the whole package is. The benefits package, the PTO package, all of that, 401k, all of that comes into play as far as what people are willing to cross over.
The laughs per minute, the LPM factor. Yeah.
I think we lost her.
Good stuff, though.
That was good.
Teresa, raise your hand if you hear us. Okay, I'm gonna disconnect.
Really good stuff.
Yeah,
that was strong opinions from someone that is an expert.
Right.
Yeah, I think that is, we were talking about would you ever post it or send out a memo or anything? And I think that might be a little too far, a little over the top. But yeah, letting your employees discuss it and letting them do that, and they have the right to do it, I think that makes sense.
Did she say it's a federal law where you cannot forbid it, or did she say this is rolling out in different states?
I don't know if she gave that detail, but I think it was
a federal law.
Yeah,
so
you can't forbid it.
Can't forbid them. You can't penalize.
You can't put in your policy. You'll be penalized or fired for talking about
salary.
Yeah. So was that just a culture thing at your position at your last company?
It was in the handbook.
It was in the handbook.
It was in the hand. So that's like.
Yeah,
that's no go.
That's no longer in the handbook.
That's company law.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
it was. It can't be there now, right? It shouldn't be. Who knows?
Who knows? I don't know.
Yeah. Well, note to our moms who are listening, don't put it in your handbook if you ever are starting a company that you can't do that. Okay, you just can't do that.
Yeah.
That's a no-go.
Well, you can keep it in there as long as nobody knows that it's a
As
federal
long as
law.
I mean,
nobody.
it's like more culture.
So
Our
who's
culture is that we don't discuss this.
Yeah.
It's not official. It's just culture.
Right. Well, who would get after you?
If you talked about it.
Yeah, I mean, if you said, oh, it's in our handbook, you cannot do that. Is that like Department of Labor?
Oh, you're saying if
Like
you
who would
penalized?
enforce that penalty?
You could sue them, right?
Who?
Wrongful termination, it would be Department of, you could just take your lawyer, right? You just sue them for wrongful termination. Let's say you got fired because you were discussing salary. Or you
Right.
could say I was discriminated
that makes
against
sense.
because I made these actions, and you just get your lawyer
makes
and you
sense.
sue them for damages.
I think it's just it's such a difficult decision as an employer because you want to keep that close to the vest compensation because it protects you a little bit.
Sure.
And employees don't get upset. But you shouldn't be as afraid of it.
Right.
I think is what as your initial, emotions may dictate.
Yeah, and I think at the end of the day, you pay what you pay, whether you can or not. And if you think, people can say greedy corporations does not. I think that most corporations, they want to. You got to keep the employees happy. No one wants to turnover. You want to lose your good employees? No one, right?
Yeah.
No one wants to lose their good employees.
No.
And so the boss is doing their best to keep the employee happy and keeping them there. But at the same time, they have to stay in business.
Yeah.
So, it would be nice to pay everyone $100 an hour all the time.
Right.
So Jordan, now that you're a business owner,
Yes.
and you've been through the process of, this is more about the whole pay raise deal,
Yeah.
where you got, it took a lot for them to give you a raise.
Right.
2 rounds of asking.
Mm-hmm.
Would you feel that you would do the same thing on the other side?
Oh, never. Right.
In their situation where you have one employee now,
Right.
right? And he's like, hey, they're giving new people this. Can I get that?
Yeah.
Where you're like, well, I was paying you that and there's no issues.
No, I think I would take the stance that Brandon has for sure. There's no way I'd hire someone else at a higher rate unless they're like, different senior, right? The person I have they're a junior developer. Now they're worth more than that to me because they know my product really well. But if let's say we hired a senior developer and they had 12 years in experience in the industry, obviously they're going to get paid more and that should be fine. But let's say I hired someone comparable and the pay raise was higher, I would certainly bump them up.
Yeah.
Probably more.
Yeah.
Because I feel like I know this person already. I know where they're at for those reasons. Yeah.
I just wonder for that employee that if you did extend that to where you're like, hey, we just hired somebody new and we're paying them more. We're going to pay you more. And if they have the feeling of resentment, like, well, why didn't you do this?
Right.
Were you going to not do this if you didn't hire somebody new? I guess you just hope that person is understanding.
Well, sometimes it's like, I think it could be like you didn't know. I didn't know market. Why would you know
Yeah, I
the
didn't
market
look.
rate? I'm not constantly watching your market rate. But now I have to because I'm hiring someone. So it's not that I didn't
Right.
want to, but I see.
I just wasn't doing it.
Yeah, like, oh, I was going to hire someone. I didn't know this was market rate now. I'm going to bump up your salary now to match this. And if you say that, I think they'd probably respect that because, hey,
Yeah.
but maybe they kick themselves being like, oh, if I would have been watching this and said that, then probably they could have got that raise.
Yeah,
sooner.
but what if you think market rate's 15 and they come for 18? You're like, well, no, I mean, I'm not going to pay you 18. And then you go out and try to hire somebody, and you're like, oh,
well,
that
you
is
should
the
do
rate.
research, right? I mean, if they
Yeah,
bring it
but
up and say-
the research I do is post a job on whatever board and what you get, you know,
because
and
you can go to salary.com, but those things vary.
Oh,
It's not. Those aren't
a
exact
low
sciences.
wage employee, a low compensated employee. It's
Right.
difficult
An
to
entry
know
level.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really.
What if market rates decline? Do you then go to them and be like, hey,
And you can't obviously
Give it
right?
back.
give it back?
Come on.
That's an
I gave it to you when it went up, and now I'm taking away.
What
when it
are
goes
you,
down.
somebody that gives something and asks for it back?
I don't get the
Good
reference.
stop. Good stop.
Yeah. Seinfeld, yeah. Where'd you get the tickets? Oh, I got it from that guy that's on the side, on the corner.
Seinfeld episode, something.
That's like one of my favorite Seinfeld episodes.
Yeah, it's really
Okay, that was good. Any final thoughts on that?
I think it's hard, and I just think you got to do your best with your employees. You want to keep them, and all of us want to make our employee. Who wants to have crappy employees? I don't think anyone in this room.
No. And who wants to have a crappy boss? Nobody. So
Yeah.
work together.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, you're almost done. I know, but one final question.
Yeah. Hit it.
If you've had people come to you and ask for raises. Brandon, I know you have.
Yeah.
And Matt, I'm not sure if you have because you've been doing less like me.
Mm-hmm.
How do you treat those? Like,
Yeah. No, I have an idea on how I treat them. Number one, if there's employees that I just haven't been super impressed with, and if they come in and ask for a raise, I'll pretty much say no, because I don't mind if they leave.
there we go. Right? To say, okay,
I don't mind it.
Right.
I don't mind it.
take that risk.
Let's say I really like them. I've had a number of situations where I kind of talk. So if an employee listens to this, they'll know how to ask for a raise. But what I'm looking for is for them to come and say, I want more pay because of this. Because I'm producing, I have more responsibilities, I'm,
Value, right? They're proving value.
yeah. And ideally they're saying, look, I have an increased value than when I first started.
Could that mean external factors as well? Like market rate, I can see right now, I feel confident I could get a job somewhere else. I don't want to go.
Throw it in there.
Sure.
I'll certainly entertain it. And if they say, look, I really feel like I could go get X somewhere else, and if you were to bring somebody in to replace me, you'd be paying X. And if I like that employee and I value them, yeah, I'm going to give it to them. Right. Or we'll have that discussion. But what I don't like, what I cannot stand, is when an employee comes in and says, I need to get paid more because my expenses are more.
Yeah. I feel that same thing. That's really hard for me.
I
That's
hate it.
That's not what pay should be about.
Exactly.
It sucks that your expenses are higher, but that's not what
No,
pay should be about.
It's a bad argument. Really bad.
It's a horrible argument, and it's one that you get it so often, and their intentions are good.
Yeah.
However, I hate listening because I think that's not my fault.
It's not your problem. I mean, you could say, yeah, you got to say, and you could, that same market rate is different because everyone has to get paid more because expenses are higher. That's the same argument, but so much better.
Sure.
Right?
Just say it like that.
Say it like that.
I mean, you have to put the lipstick on. And if you don't know how to present the raise, it's a scary situation in and of itself, but have a plan. And ideally you can be proving, you can debate your value to the company, to the manager, whatever that person is. You can debate your value and offer and say, I am providing this type of value. I'd like to request that. And so that's how I would do it. But I'm not everybody. Yeah. I've seen a bunch of different
Look,
situations.
I just bought a new truck. I need a raise.
Yeah.
Right. And honestly, if I really like that employee, I'd be like, sorry. Sorry. Yeah. And in fact, they do that in different ways because they'll come up and say, man, I'm so stressed out and costs are so much and this and that and this and that.
So it's almost like they're not even asking for a raise. They're kind of like passive aggressive.
Exactly. And I just listen.
Yeah.
You just have to listen because that turns me off really quickly. But because, look, I care about me. I care about you, but I also care about me. And if you're providing me more value, then in my mind, I'm like, yeah, that makes a ton of sense to me.
Right. That's how money should work. That's what the money is an exchange of value, right?
Right.
You give me value, I give you money. That's what it's supposed to be.
Right.
It's not because you
need it.
Right.
You need it to pay the car bill.
You can't say, need it is exactly it. Right. You got to provide
You
value.
should say, who's paying the car bill now? And they're like, well, I am. And then you say, well, why should I have to pay for it?
Or
like you made that decision. I didn't buy your new car.
Or do I have to give you a raise every time you buy a new car?
Yeah.
like what? How does that work?
Well, next time consult with me and we'll decide what kind of car you should get.
Or
I think you should sell that car. And get
yeah.
There's Vespas that are looking real good now.
If I'm like paying this, can I at least go to the car buying experience with you? Like, can I negotiate that rate or like
maybe I can get it on weekends? I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't know.
Yeah.
Or I guess go start your own business and control how much you get paid.
That's right.
Yeah.
Reference to the last mini pod that we had weeks and weeks ago.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that was a very engaging conversation. Thank you guys so much for participating. Matt actually came up with that topic. I thought it was incredible. Hopefully you got value out of it.
That's what I'm here for. Bring value.
Matt's here for a ton of value. Don't you dare ask for a raise. No. You need to bring another sponsor.
I'll give you 100%.
You need to bring
100% raise.
I'm going to make a goal. First sponsor. You heard it here. First.
Whoa, wait.
How much is it? I mean, I think we have to have a dollar.
I'm claiming the first sponsor.
I mean, The next.
The next first sponsor.
Yeah, you don't get any payback from.
That's true. That's true.
You'll get paid from the next sponsor.
Okay, you heard it and saw it here.
Has to be more than $10 an episode.
I didn't.
It's got to be, right? Otherwise,
Yeah, I'm fine with that. I'm fine with that.
Yeah, I can't just be like, hey.
Okay,
your
I'll
kids could sponsor us.
We're talking about disclosing salaries. Do we have to disclose how many listeners we have?
No. They can go look it up on the metrics. It's clear.
Can you?
Okay, it's public. It's public.
Yeah.
No, in fact,
JordanBHanson.blogspot.com.
No, when you subscribe to our podcast, there is a contract that you cannot disclose the amount of listeners that we have.
Forbidden. Don't
talk about it.
There will be penalties.
Okay, Matt, go get a sponsor.
Go get it.
Okay.
Dude.
Thanks for listening to the Founders Podcast. Be sure to follow the host on Twitter. Search @JordBHanson and @BrandonMinert to discuss more. Also, be sure to visit thefounderspod.com to join the conversation, access the show notes, and discover our fantastic bonus content.